I sold the house.
Our house?
Maud, you can't look after yourself, let alone a house.
Get a job or something.
A job doing what?
I don't know.
Thinking about hiring a woman to help around the house.
I want to put up a sign.
I'm Maud.
Looking for a woman.
What do you think I am?
Let me tell you how it is around here. There's me, them dogs, them chickens, then you.
You want me here, don't you? Because I'll walk out right now.
Who told you you could paint fairies on the wall?
I think it looks all right.
Did you paint that happy little chicken?
Yeah, I wanted to remember his happier days.
I'd like to see one of your larger paintings.
$5.
Done.
Her paintings have even been sold to Vice President Nixon. You can find Maud Lewis selling her paintings from the front steps of her little house here in Marshalltown, Nova Scotia. Can I get you to look towards the camera this way, Mr. Lewis? And smile, maybe? Nice, thank you.
Never asked for this. My face on the TV for all the world to laugh at. Ever since you stepped into my life, nothing but pain.
I've known you for years, Maud, and I'm still trying to figure out what makes you tick.
Here I stand.
You can do much better than me.
Got everything I want with you, Ev. Everything.
I'm dug from the road.
Make my designs up. I love a window.
Cut from the
Bird whizzing by. It's always different.
I'm dug from the
The whole of life already framed.
and cut from the
Right there.
kill.
Thank you so much for being here, you guys, and congratulations on this film. I thought it was so beautiful with some incredible performances, and as I was saying in the green room to you, and I'll keep saying right here, a really subtle direction on a film that I think in the hands of another director would have been much more sentimental and much more about the perseverance and the success of someone's paintings versus the sort of love story that she had. So talk to me about developing this. I know this project was in the work for about 10 years, right? When you got on board, what was your take on Maud Lewis and what you wanted to explore? Obviously, it's here on film, but how did you come to that take?
There's something in that script, as always, that you recognize and maybe fall in love with. And I think for me, it was two things. The fact that it was this woman artist who struggled to create her art, and then the portrait of this wonderful relationship, this marriage that these two unlikely souls meet and spend the rest of their lives together, and you don't see that a great deal. And that was the challenge, to make a rather kind of intimate film, totally performance-based, and get these two great guys to come and make it with me.
A quite, I would say, is this unlikely relationship that is also quite bleak at times, which adds obviously a depth to the relationship. But I think it could also, a fear would be that it would push some viewers away. They wouldn't know how to get involved in this love story because of the bleakness that you present. Was that a tightrope that you felt you were walking tonally? Were you ever worried about that?
No, it's always difficult. And if my inclination is always to go to that darker place.
Please.
And there's a kind of a bleakness in that landscape that I relate to because of where I'm from. It's very much like the west of Ireland, and it is like any relationship. It is kind of a tightrope, You try not to think about, you try and find the truth in something, and somehow that wins out, and it's the reality, and therefore it is the film. So you've got. What I always wanted to do was, in the beginning, that relationship was difficult, and then you meet Ethan's character, and you can't imagine at the end of the film that you're going to fall in love with him or be on that journey with him where you think this man has actually found love in his life. And she brought it there.
You find an understanding with him as a viewer. You may not fall in love with him as a person, but you find an understanding with him. And I want to ask you guys questions about the performances, but before I even do that, I know you guys haven't seen it, but give them a round of applause because you guys are so amazing in this film. Wow, no one... Clearly not the captain of this ship. That took a little while to get out of you guys. Sally, talk to me about crafting your performance of Maud Lewis. How much work did it take? What kind of work did it take?
Well, I was quite lucky that I had time to always feel that you can never do enough. It's like doing your homework, and that I got to Newfoundland quite early on and wanted to get there. It felt nice to have that luxury of time. Sometimes you don't always get that, and there are so many threads to pull together: her physicality and then the accent and all of it, really. It just and wanting to do it carefully, and then there's the art. I sort of started that in London. I wanted to, if we had the luxury of seeing her paint and really paint, and it's a side of me that I love. Art's quite important to me. I grew up with artist parents, and
so you paint on your own as well?
I do, but I haven't for a while. So it was a really nice excuse to just start again, and worked with this lovely, naive artist, but creates beautiful paintings and sells them alongside her, full-time job. And Ashlyn sourced her, and that was a real gift to sort of take apart Maudie's paintings. You learn so much about someone. It's reminding me of an A-level exercise where it did that with Van Gogh, and I'll never forget it. It was very like that, sort of taking her apart and then recreating her work, and that's where I began. And then the physicality and sort of researching that quite carefully, because you're representing a disability. You don't want to do to patronize people with that condition, and represent it the best of your ability, but also not let it define her. So it was lots of threads to pull in, and then when you step on set, you just have to hope that you've done your homework and let it all go, I suppose.
One of those threads that you pull in is a sort of is a positivity that Maud has, and it's something that I think I've seen you do quite well as a performer before. I mean, the first time I came into contact with you as a performer, I think, was with Happy Go Lucky, the Mike Leigh film. Such a wonderful film. But another character that kind of radiates an exuberance and a positivity in the similar way that Maud does. Where did you hear that Maud had that? I mean, I know there's a brief documentary clip at the end of the film where we see Maud having kind of a light smile in the midst of her life, but where did you sort of find that out about her?
I think it's in her art, like this incredible...
Fair enough.
Yeah, exuberance. It's sort of, and positive. You can't not look at her art, and you have to smile. It makes you happy.
You're absolutely right. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh, it's kind of a dumb question. You're right. It's a very positive, exuberant art that she has.
No, I mean, it's... and also, like you say, in that documentary, there's this incredible spirit that, despite her, being hunched over and she's got curvature of the spine, there's just a lovely energy about her. And, of course, you sort of take artistic license, so we don't really know what happened behind closed doors, but I think with her intelligence and there has to be, I think we sort of brought that out, but it is in her art. And there's a lovely, the first, Ashlyn sent me a picture of her that's later on in her life. She's surrounded by her artwork, and she's hunched over a little table, and there's this beautiful smile. And I think it was somebody who's dealing with so much pain, physical pain and emotional, and what she's dealt with throughout her life. And this incredible smile, and she's doing what makes her happy. So, anyway, long-winded.
No, that was wonderful. Ethan, you have an incredibly hard job in the film, I think, in terms of presenting your character, or the arc of your character, because he's not necessarily unlikable at the beginning of the film, but he does change by the end, but you don't necessarily want to make him come off as an incredibly different, warm person. He has to still be the kind of person that he was at the beginning of the movie, but with a slight change. Can you talk about kind of crafting that arc and making sure that you didn't change the character too much by the end of the film?
One of the wonderful, it's a very smart question. It was the single greatest, the most dynamic, interesting part of my job making that movie. But what we had, we were all on location, and we had nothing else to do, no other distractions or anything, but to disappear into this landscape and into these people. And there were a couple things that were happening on set that were really exciting to me. And one was that it was very obvious that there was a high bar of excellence that Sally was really striving for, and that Aisling was working, supporting, and they'd worked together before. And so they had an understanding. And when I saw what they were going for, sometimes you get to a set and it's clear that a director's priority is the cinematography. Sometimes you get to a set and the director's priority is, this brilliant lighting that he's really interested or she's really interested in, or some directors are really into writing, Most of them are really into cinematography, And what Aisling did is make the acting incredibly important. It was the number one priority, what was happening on set, what we were doing. Everything had to be ready. Everything was prepared for us. And in turn, what that does is it makes you take your work really seriously. When other people don't take it seriously, then you think, well, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I'll go have a coffee, And but they were the target was very small on this movie, and they were working really hard to hit it precisely. And I get really turned on by that level of precision. It's an exciting challenge, and so I don't think people do change that much. We are who we are is who we are, but our hearts can change, and our intelligence can change, and our attitude can change. And so, Sally's imagination is so deep and so real that you can dive into it, and it helps keep you on track. We created a world. Some directors have put a set and it happens all the time. Actors have to work so hard because the set is so fake. You have these people lived in a 12 by 12 house. It's a tiny little house. And the easiest thing in the world would be to put a bunch of green screens around a house and put it on a stage, and we wouldn't have to worry about rain or heat or anything like that. We could just shoot the thing. But instead, we went out in the middle of a field in Canada, out in the middle of nowhere, disappeared, and you can see our breath, and we have to make a fire, and the crew's hiding behind a closet, and we can't hush up the dogs, and the rain starts seeping through. And it's not hard to be real. Spend 5 weeks there. You start to think about, wow, the winter must be really hard because the autumn is hard.
And this guy's a fisherman. He's lived in this house almost his whole life. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, that was the joy of this production.
Actually, what kind of difficulties did that bring to you in making that choice to shoot in a house like that? We just had a director here the other day who was like, oh, we chose to shoot in this house. We couldn't remove any walls. It was so hard. It was really unbearable. I wish I had chosen a set.
No.
Well, when I joined this project, because it's been so long in development, sometimes this baggage kind of attached to it. And we had these conversations about, as Ethan said, we'll put it in a space. It's never a studio because you can never afford in a space somewhere. I mean, I remember standing in this particular kind of storehouse, and I'm not terribly good at measurement. Sometimes I need to see something, and I got my director of photography. I said, walk 12 foot out, so I was like, and I thought, what are we doing here? What am I going to do if Sally says to me, I'd like to open the door, and wouldn't it be great if I could have kind of walked out onto that road, and then I'm going to have to match that 3 weeks later out in the house out there, and I'm going to have to say, no, Ethan, when we did that scene 5 weeks ago, you actually, put your hand there, it's crazy. And so in the end, we decided we'd break, partly because of the elements. People are terrified of the weather, and they get hurricane season there, and they get snow, and they get wind. And you know what? I said, well, but why don't we just do that and be brave about it, and put thermals on and try and get on with it, and now you've got another character in the film. You don't have to think about that. They don't have to think about, I want to open that window. Oh, what if I went out that? Wouldn't it be really nice if I go out and kind of bring the dog in, and you get all of that for free.
Get firewood and all that stuff.
Would you have oh, sorry, Sally, go ahead.
Just to go on from that, just people think it's actually makes much more, it's just common sense. It just, that you have the freedom to live it.
Well, especially if you're making a movie where you're focusing on the performances so much. Now everybody is kind of free to take a chance, to try things, and you even kind of I don't think this is a spoiler at all, but you know, the way that you're talking about closing the door, going outside, is how you wrap up the movie in many ways. Was that in the script, or was that something that you guys sort of found while shooting there?
That was Ethan's last day, and that wind was there. It was amazing. Sometimes you get really lucky, you know, and the wind was howling, and you know, the flapping of the calendar and just those things. And there was one little thing that I realised, because you know, you start off and you're in a film, and you know, if you're lucky, your instinct kind of works. That little note that he put up in that shop, I sort of said to the art department, keep that note. We're going to use that somewhere. And we put in that little, and you know, she's still sort of present in that house. But no, and then Ethan said, you know, what if I, you know, I think it was written, you know, he takes the sign in, and Ethan said, why don't I, you know, we never closed the storm door before. Why don't I do that? And you're just left in this blackness with this window, you know.
And the drip, isn't there?
Yeah, and yeah, the drip,
Hitting
the
her
rain
table.
coming through the.
Those are those wonderful happy accidents that when the film was done, you couldn't imagine it being any other way. Yet it's this weird accident that happened on the day that you had very little control
I find
over.
almost all of people's creativity and working together happens that way. There was a great interview with Mike Nichols right before he passed, where they asked him what he was proud of. And he said that of all the work that he was most proud of, it was the moments that it wasn't, you couldn't remember whose idea it was.
Yeah.
Whenever you think, oh, I've got a great idea, it probably means you're being pretentious or, you know. But whenever you actually listen to somebody else, and, you know, like the end of The Graduate, that freeze frame, none of them can remember whose idea that was. It was a combination of not getting the location they wanted, Dustin being really frustrated with the script and thinking the line was wrong, and the cinematographer. And then the cinematographer leaned over to Mike Nichols and says, what if we just and Mike went, great idea. And then it's like, and when then the movie ends, and you're like, it couldn't ever have been any other way. It seems so obvious, but yet it wasn't one person's. It was a collection of things that happened.
And it's an instinctual moment that actually happened on that film that is now has been written about as a generation defining moment. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm curious. I'm curious about the without being prurient here, the love scenes, for lack of a better word, maybe in the film. Again, really daring to do that and then still feel like you're telling a love story. Can you talk about shooting those scenes and writing them, and sort of still being able to focus on the fact that this is a love story, because they're rough around the edges, to say the least.
Can I take it for a second, because I want to answer that so bad?
Please.
We're just full of so many fake ideas about what romantic life is and what human sexuality is, and we're so full of so much garbage
I agree,
that we just
movies.
fill. I know, but movies are the ones that do it. The movies fill young people's heads, and the internet fills young people's heads with this very plastic idea of intimacy. And then whenever they bump up against the weird, strange, scratchy messiness of real life, they freak out and think something's wrong with them.
I get super excited when I see a movie do it. It thrills me.
I was very proud. I watched the movie again last night for the first time in a while, and I felt so relieved to see a movie with two human beings that didn't have a 13-year-old's imagination of what a kiss is like. You know, it's sometimes they're like that, sometimes they're not.
It's messy.
I've
It should
spoken.
be messy and weird.
And also you're bringing yourself back to a time where, you know, relationships in life was quite different, you know. This is a man, you know, and you know, he's lived a rather silent, very singular existence for 20 years before she arrives into his life, and as has she. And so those things aren't comfortable, and they're not, you know, it's quite a little tough place to be, you know. And, you know, and then there are those scenes like the wedding night, you know, what we do for the wedding night. And, you know, we just got this idea, wouldn't it be great if they danced together? You know, that little moment, and have that conversation. And that's really, in a way, for me, the most intimate they ever get.
Well, it's finding these brief moments of for lack of a better word, romance in the midst of an otherwise somewhat bleak affair that makes them, I think, all the more purposeful and powerful. You talk about the time period, and I just commend you again, and bravery is the wrong word, but you think of even sometimes Victorian movies where you see courtship and love, and you think, there's no way that's the way that went in this patriarchal society. Yeah. And the way that you guys cover it, you allow a love story to bloom, and you follow a love story in the midst of something that I think nobody would have the courage to. They would have made it like a 13-year-old at moments, sort of attacked it that way. Sally, you talked a little bit about her handicap and doing that as a performance, and then not going too far. How do you know what is going too far and what is not? Because quite often, even when we see the images of her on camera in the documentary, they're a huge fan of the movie. That was a trucker going by.
It's my dad.
He's going, I love folk art.
Naive art. I love it.
He's always doing it.
Even when you see her in the documentary, she's doing different things than you do, and I think that's because you as a performer have to find something truthful and believable for you.
Yeah, you have to sort of make it fit and trust your director that they will bring it back, and
you always start over and then have them bring you back.
Do I? Yeah.
No. No. You've just, it's that collective, that lovely way of working together.
And you just want it to be, you want it to fit, like you say. You don't want it to be a caricature or a pantomime or to be the main. I didn't want it to be the main focus. And we talked a lot about that it didn't define her. And it's just, and also getting those various degrees throughout the ages, and how did she disintegrate and degenerate and age fast for her years. And sorry, this family.
Massive.
They're all over town. Just coming through.
Huge Naive art fan in the city. Yeah. Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has right here?
Hi, how are you? I wanted to ask, piggyback off of Ricky, and say what exactly was her disability, and what made you all choose the role, and what made you write about her?
Well, she had a juvenile arthritis, affected her when she was a child, and it's very debilitating. It gets worse as you age, and I researched a few. There are sort of videos online, YouTube, of people dealing with it now and how it affects really young people and affects them in different ways. She also had curvature of the spine, so she was getting lower to the ground, and my granny had a similar curvature. It can come later in life, but she was, her bones were sort of disintegrating in incredible pain. So it was affecting her neck and the way she couldn't hold a brush, and it's literally sort of forced in there, and see her hands, like her knuckles, like tree roots over a brush, and she's amazing, that despite all that, and it made her happy, and that her art sustained her in a way.
And she also had emphysema, and she smoked. Yeah. And the paint she used for her paintings were, lead-based and quite toxic, and so it's a combination of all of those things. If you imagine that the heat from that stove going, because it was the only heat they had, and she's in that tiny, and she's painting and she's smoking, and
without sort of pain medication or insulation, the walls are so paper thin in that extreme weather. I don't know how she survived as long as she did.
Next question.
Hi. So, Sally, for you to have other roles in the past, such as Poppy and Ginger, and this being an existing person opposed to characters that were original, how did it feel for you to take on a role like this of a person who has existed?
Sure, I think it's a great question, and it's you want to honour them and do them justice, you know, their life, and it's sort of it's quite a delicate thing, and people that remember her, family, friends, they still have very fond memories of her, and also not being Canadian or from that part of the world, sort of to take that on, and it's a huge honour, but you also dealing with it's fictionalized to a point, and sort of taking license with what happened and their relationship, and there's not that much is known. There is that documentary, so I suppose you sort of have to do all the research and try and glean as much as you can from direct source material, but also treat it as any other film in a way, and not get too hung up on that. But yeah, it's scary because you want to. She was phenomenal, and her legacy as well. So yeah, you want to do her justice.
Do you ever find moments where you find yourself getting hung up on the fact that it's a real person, and then have to remind yourself that it is a film and essentially has to become a character for you as an actor?
I didn't actually during it. You sort of, like you were saying, you sort of take it on and make it your own, and we are, making a film, even though it's about real life people, and so you know that it won't probably please everyone, of course, and people have their own view. It's like a book, It's people they're purists for classics, and every interpretation is not going to. It's not going to. Different interpretations for different. You can have thousands for the same book, a source material. So no, you have to, I suppose, let that go and just focus on the work and do that to the best of your ability. And hope that you're doing the best job you can. That's not really answering your question, is it?
No, that was great. Ethan, I'm curious before I move on to the next audience question. Was there a good amount, outside of the script, a good amount of source material for you to sort of dig into about your character? Emmett or Everett, I forgot.
Not as much, Everett.
Everett.
For me, it's important to remember that we're not journalists. That we live in a wonderful era, actually, for this kind of art, because you can Google Everett Lewis, and you can find out everything that you want to know. And I often find sometimes with movies, filmmakers can make the mistake of, well, why did the character go exit the interview at that moment? Well, because he really did. And you're like, yeah, okay, he really did, but I didn't understand why, and I didn't understand why it was relevant to your story. And you have to kind of try to embody some kind of larger truth, kind of, for lack of a better word, a spiritual truth to the people and the time, and make art out of it. If you wanted to do a journalistic documentary about her, you could. What we tried to do is take a look at this art, hear this story, and turn it into something relevant to you, of what could be meaningful about it. In a way, it's kind of, for me, it's like when you stare at these pictures that she painted, and you dream of what their love affair might have been like. What's the movie you play? Yeah. Well, we're going to play it for you. We're going to act it out. And it doesn't need to be factually accurate to be true to the experience of watching it. The facts you can find out, and they are meaningful in a different way.
Absolutely.
It's got to feel true. Yeah.
Before I move on to the next question, this isn't a question. I just wanted to compliment you on a shot in the film, which is when the two of them first meet, not at the house, but she's hearing him tell the store clerk, and you just focus on her, and he's out of focus in the background. I loved it, and you hit the table, but you just maintain him out of focus and don't cut him. I thought it was a brilliant decision. Next question.
Hi, my question's for Ethan. I just wanted to ask you about Seymour. Yeah. I saw it a while ago, and it was a great movie, and it wasn't just about the musician and his life. There's so much more to it. So I was curious, what made you take that project up? And
well, it's funny, the whole projects relate to each other, because it's about, I guess, something that's just important to me, which is creativity, and that I think that sometimes the creativity is nature manifest in each one of us. You know, then that in whatever ways people are creative all over the world, and whether it's architecture or the way they take care of their children, or the way they express their creativity, their essence. You know, how does it manifest in what you do? Some people do it through political activism, you know, and that the larger community needs all of it. And one of the things that I like about Seymour Bernstein, this documentary about a pianist, is that he found that in exploring his well of talent, he could also be a better person, a better man, and a better citizen, and a better friend. And so when I read stories like Maudie, it's a different way of seeing that. Somebody who had such permission to be miserable. You know, a crippling disease, misogyny, poverty, and instead she said, I refuse to let my light be diminished. And in turn, she changed slowly. I mean, it's a beautiful scene when her abusive aunt comes back and says, you're the only one in the family who's ever been happy. This person she didn't even take seriously as a human being, you know? And so, in its creativity, like people think that creativity is just art or something that you can buy or something. It's nothing to do with that, really. It's somehow us. It's us speaking to each other in whatever way we can. And she spoke to her community with these tiny little paintings. Started as Christmas cards, you know? And when people witness that caring, it's the same way, even if you don't like a piano player, right? Or you don't care about classical music or something. If you witness somebody play, you know, Brahms beautifully, and it kind of takes your breath away. If you're in the room, you can't, how did you do that? And you even find yourself moved without, I don't like classical music. I made the whole documentary and I found myself moved over and over again. So that's how they intersect. Thank you for asking.
I think that's all the time that we have. Guys, when can people see Maudie? How can people see Maudie?
16th, is it?
June
16th.
16th.
Yeah, June
Excellent.
16th.
June 16th in theaters. It's a wonderful film. Two of the most beautiful performances I've seen this year, and a really wonderful film. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Thank